Hi, this is Terry Healy, and I'm an escalation engineer at Microsoft. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the Human Resources and Payroll time card entry that released with Microsoft Dynamics GP 2013 R2. This is the first product that is part of the Business Portal replacement strategy. So this is the time card entry that will replace what you enter your time for in Business Portal. The learning objectives today for our session are going to be first covering the setup of your time card entry. Then I will show you your employee time card entry setup. And last, I will show you how to enter a time card. If you are familiar with the Business Portal Human Resource Self-Service Suite, this is very much similar format to what you have in Business Portal. So if you are familiar with Business Portal, this will be very easy for you to catch on to the new functionality in the time card entry. First, what we're going to cover is the setup of our time cards. Then we will look at our employees, and then we will enter your time cards. Those will be the learning objectives today's session. So let's get right into the product and look at setting up our time cards. So I have installed here Microsoft Dynamics GP 2013 with the R2 release. If I go ahead and go into my HR and payroll, so I'll be navigating from the Human Resource and Payroll navigation area. If you were using Business Portal prior, none of the Business Portal data will migrate into this new time card entry. This is all new setup. Very similar, like I stated, to Business Portal, but you will have to set it up new once you go to Microsoft Dynamics GP 2013 R2. Customers that are using Business Portal can still use Business Portal for the other areas of the product, but they can also deploy this time card entry and start using it and see how it functions for them. The rest of the Business Portal Human Resource Self-Service Suite will release in Microsoft Dynamics GP 2015. So right now we are just going to look at the time card piece. Along with this training video is a detailed documentation, and in that detailed documentation I have all the setup windows and the navigations to these areas, and now I'm just going to demonstrate the setup of that information. There's also a quick guide in there of items that you'll need to set up in order to start using the time card entry in that document. So first, what we'll want to go into is our payroll setup. So I'm going to go ahead and expand out our setup under the Human Resources and Payroll area and go under Payroll. There are many new tables to this new time card entry that are referred to in the detailed documentation. Under your payroll setup is a time card options. This has to be saved in order for your time card entry to work. This is very similar to the direct report views we had in Business Portal. We can go ahead and move these around if we want, and this is our assignment priority. You can also see that we have a box in here to include inactive employees, and so that will be in all our lookups, and so most may want that unmarked. If we want to view multiple levels of direct reports, like the tree view you had in Business Portal, you will want to have this marked. This is new compared to Business Portal, as in all our lookups in Business Portal, some of them did not exclude inactive records. So this was added in the new time card entry that I think a lot of customers will like. And we can go ahead and save out of this window. The next, what we'll do is all the new windows were added right down here to the bottom for the setup. So we will just cover each one for simplicity. And once we have it set up, then we will look at our employee level. So first, let's look at the time on behalf. Again, this functionality existed in Business Portal, so it's very similar. You would set up a time on behalf code, and then you can assign that code to your employees that you want to enter time on behalf of. So you name your code whatever you want. And some customers use this in Business Portal as if we had satellite offices. They may have made an assistant. That person had rights to enter time on behalf of other employees. That's what time on behalf means. So you would set up your time and a half code, and then you can choose whatever you name that code, and then can you enter time on behalf of? What departments, what maybe classes, or down to the employee level. So you can see here, I have a few employees selected for my time on behalf of code. Then you can assign this code to the people that can enter time on behalf information for these employees. There's also an admin right up here on the right, and that is new, and it did not exist in Business Portal. And what the admin code does is you mark it to designate a time on behalf of code as an administrator code. This means that all active employees, employee classes, and departments for the time on behalf code are selected. Any new employees or employee classes or departments that are added are automatically selected in this code. So where I could see this useful is some of the customers I had worked with on Business Portal had specific employees that could enter time on behalf of for everybody. But what they always had to do was when they added a new department or a new employee, they'd have to go into that window, choose mark all to make sure they get that new employee. With it being the admin code, if I create one admin code and I assign it to an employee, whenever I create new employees, that employee is always going to have the right to enter time on behalf for those new employees. So you don't have to go in and always make sure to mark all. So it just kind of saves a step with this admin code. And that was new and different from how it functions in the Business Portal product. I'll go ahead and save out of this window. Next, it is the time card assignment setup. Again, this is very similar to how we assigned in Business Portal. You can name your assignment code whatever you want, and then you assign this code to departments. You can assign by position, shift code, or pay codes. And I'm sorry, not assign. What we're doing is creating this code, and we are marking what they can modify, or when they enter their time cards, can they choose the drop down of these departments and change them? Do we want them to change their position, shift codes, and the last is pay codes. You can see we have show inactive in here as well. And we try to add that throughout this new product. So what pay codes or time codes do I want them to enter time on? You can see I marked them all. Shift code, position, and department. Then we take these assignment codes and we assign them to our employees. So you can name them whatever you want. You'd probably have multiple assignment codes that you're going to assign to your different groups of employees. There's also a new checkbox in this window that you might notice up here, and that's called default. And I really like this. This is new and something that we did not have in Business Portal. What the default is if you can only have one default in the system. So you can see I named mine default. I didn't have to, but I did. So I created one called default. I marked it as default. What that means is if I create a new employee and I do not assign them anything, they will get the default code. So if there's like a default option that most employees get, maybe like your hourly employees, you don't have to assign them that code all the time. You can just not assign them anything and they will automatically get this default code. So again, like the admin code, it may save you some time in setup if you have a group of employees that are similar and can use this default option. Next are pay schedules. Pay schedules we loved very much in Business Portal, and they were also a very much of a headache for us, as we know if you use Business Portal. So what we tried to do with our pay schedules is make them much easier in this new product. I set up one that started here in January of 2014, but you can cross years. So if your pay schedule really started in 2013, you can put in here, 12/28 of 2013. It will create the pay schedules and you can edit them. There are no restrictions like we had in Business Portal, that it had to be 365 days. It had to be this. It couldn't overlap. There are no restrictions like that. So I have found it much easier to manipulate with this pay schedule setup functionality than we did in Business Portal. You can name them whatever you want. You can also go ahead and name it 2013, but have the year start in 2014. You couldn't do that in Business Portal as well. You create multiple schedules, and then you assign those schedules to your employees. This is your active pay periods. And so what this allows you to do is how many pay periods in the past and then current and future can an employee see. So you may want to limit this down to 2 or 3 if you don't want them entering on old pay periods. We go ahead and we put in our beginning dates, and we go ahead and create pay periods. And you can see we scroll down and it has all the pay periods, and we can edit them as well. Then we go ahead and assign these pay periods to our employees. And we can assign the pay periods by locations, departments, positions, class, and then most granular, we can assign the pay schedules, by employee. And you can see I have some employees marked in here with their pay schedules. So I'd say the pay schedule functionality, it's similar in view, similar functionality, but much easier to work with. We have to have our employees assigned to pay schedules in order for them to be able to enter time on. Next are time card restrictions. And this is very similar to employee. We create a restriction code and we assign it to our employees. What's in that restriction is, are we going to allow them to edit departments, positions, state tax, local, shifts, days worked, weeks worked? This is our maximum restrictions. Do we want to say that the maximum hours per day are 24? The per pay period maximums, I have a minimum of 2 hours, 99 is my max. And then we do allow required start and stop times, which I don't have my mark today, but those are very similar to Portal as well. I do want to emphasize, just like how Business Portal was, this time card entry will not replace a time clock system. If you have a lot of rules and scanning or badges or thumbprints, this is a very simplistic time card entry, just as Portal was. So it has not changed in that functionality, but we do have the same restrictions as we did in Business Portal and start-stop times. But please review it and don't feel it's going to replace a time clock, because it does not have all the rules in place that you may need with a time clock or a punch-in, punch-out system. This is more, I enter my time, my manager approves it, and we can have different levels just as we did in Business Portal. The next is your time card batches. So we will create time card batches that, again, flow into human resources and payroll. What's nice about this new product is if you're accruing in HR, it will update HR and payroll automatically. So you don't need to reconcile or anything like you had in the past with Business Portal. This will update both payroll and human resources. So I'll go ahead and I have a prefix assigned here. I can assign that by location, department, position, class, employee. Last right there. We have mark all, unmark all. We added, we did inactives again. And all these windows have a little more deep detail to help you when you're selecting and choosing that information. This will come into a batch into payroll and HR, and it'll have that same functionality where it has your pay periods at the end of it as well. This will conclude the setup portion of your time cards. Again, all your setup is under payroll setup, and then these few windows right down in here are your setup required for the new time card entry. You can notice that I'm in Microsoft Dynamics GP. So all of this is in the Microsoft Dynamics GP product. You're probably wondering, how will this deploy? So you can, not all of your employees are going to log into GP. So you will deploy Web Client, and Web Client will be your link that your employees will log into. Also, in the summer of 2014, going into fall, we will be releasing apps. And so your employees can also, if you wish, have them load an app, and they can enter their time on the app, submit it, and it'll go through workflow, and also update the back office once it has gone through workflow. So you can deploy it with web client. That would be the link that your employees are actually logging into GP. They will see their home page, and it would be a very restricted home page. I'm user SA today, but it would be a very restrictive home page of just showing their what can I do, and you can see here it'll have my time management turned on. In the future, we would see, I can see my paychecks, change my profile, all these different information on their homepage, but they wouldn't see all of the GP product or different windows because we would be limiting them to that self-service role as an employee. But they would be using the web client to log into as a limited user. Now that we've finished our setup of our time cards, we will look at what we need to do at the employee level to make sure our time card entry is set up. So I will go back into the product, into Microsoft Dynamics GP 2013. I'm going to choose the Human Resources and Payroll navigation. This time I'm going to focus under the cards. So you can look under cards, and we have our basic employee setup. If I go down here a little bit after direct deposit, you can see we have a couple new options: time on behalf and time card assignment. So if I click on the time on behalf, this is where if it is an employee who can enter time on behalf of other employees, this is where you would assign this. So today I'm going to focus on employee Terry that I have created in the system. Terry is an employee. She's an assistant of a satellite office, and she can enter time cards for specific employees. So I'm going to arrow over. I have assigned her the hour time on behalf code. And if I look at that under the employee, it defaults in what I had at the setup, but I can also change it as well. So we can change it at the setup and roll it down, or we can mark it here. So I have a few employees that I can enter time on behalf of. Again, we have the show inactive as we did in those other windows. So this is where you would assign your time on behalf of codes to your employees. You can also see there is your admin code that we talked about in the setup. If you want to mark Terry as an admin, meaning anytime I add new employees, departments, positions, she would be able to enter for all new employees getting entered. Next, I will go into the time card assignment. So I'm going to choose Terry again. And this is where you would want to assign codes to your employees. I had only created that one default code, so I'm going to just assign it. If I assign Terry nothing, she would still be able to enter time cards. She would automatically get the default code because I had flagged it as a default code in the setup. So we can see that I'm allowing her. I can also default this in, but change it as well. So if I wanted to add a few more departments in the drop down for her to change against, and maybe positions, I could do that in here as well. There's the shifts and the pay codes. You can see that from the setup, some of these did not get marked as they did from the setup, and that's because employee Terry does not have these codes. So if they come in here and are not marked, it's probably because the employee does not have the pay codes or the time codes, even though they were all marked in the setup. So I'll go ahead and save that. Next, we have to talk about our users. So how are we tying our users to our employees? So when you install R2 and are going to deploy the time cards, all your employees are going to have to be a Microsoft Dynamics GP user. They will need to be a limited user. So that's a little bit different than when we deployed Business Portal and we set up users in Business Portal. With this new product, they have to be a Microsoft Dynamics GP user. So I'm in as user SA in the Fabricam company. So what I'm going to do is go into my employee record. I'm going to choose Terry again. And under the additional information button, This is where you choose your user. So I am in as user SA, but if you were an employee, you would create Terry as a GP user and you would assign that user to your employee ID. So you're going to have users for each employee that you're going to want to use this product. But for my demonstration today, I'm using user SA that was already created in the system, and I'm assigning it to the employee Terry. We are going to be using Workflow 2.0, which is a brand new workflow product that also released with R2. And Workflow has documentation as well that will be coming out. But today I set up a very simplistic workflow just for demonstration purposes, where Terry's an all-up manager as well and a workflow approver. In Business Portal, we had workflows for each type, which is going to be a little bit different here with the Workflow 2.0 product. But you can see that we still, for when we look at managers that can see our employees, we still are using the supervisor field down here, but not for Workflow. The Workflow will use your Active Directory settings. So I still want to set up, you can see I'm a supervisor here and Terry is the supervisor. And I have assigned this supervisor code to other employees as well. So we still use this, but when I submit my information, it's going to go to my manager in Active Directory. So that's a little bit different than what Business Portal had as well. The workflow documentation will cover all of those changes. I'm not going to get into that today in the time card entry app, but just know that we use this supervisor field, but not for the workflow piece as we had in the past. The new workflow will give us more robust functionality than what we had in Business Portal. We will be able to change the emails that get sent to employees, which we could not do before. And it will allow us to get more granular in sending different things. So for example, if I work maybe over 85 hours and you want that to get a second level approval, they have different restrictions in there of setting that up in the workflow. So that the new workflow will give us a lot more functionality than what we had with our Business Portal workflow. Now that we covered the employee time card entry, the last piece of our training is showing you how to enter time cards. Now that we've got the setup in place, we've assigned the information to our employees, we're now ready to go enter time cards and look at some of that functionality. So I'll go back into Microsoft Dynamics GP. I'm still in as user SA, and I'm a manager and an employee as Terry. I want to show you a couple things on your home page. So you'll want to set this up as well. So if you click on customize this page, you're going to want to mark the time management. So then you're going to see this background area that shows your employee information. So when I log in as an employee, I can see my time in those different tiles. Also, if I click on change role, when you set this up, you can choose the self-service role. So all your employees will have that self-service role. So if we look a little bit at the time management app, you have your saved time cards, rejected, and I can drill back on these. Pending user action. So if I'm a manager, it's going to show me anything that I need to approve. So we really tried to make this very simplistic. One landing page where they can see their information. I have an approved time card. And then here is my vacation and sick balance. So today the time card entry product only shows the payroll, vacation, and sick time. So this 140 is pulling from cards, payroll, employee. I'm choosing to accrue in payroll in my setup. So there's my 140, and that's pulling from the UPR 00100 master table. If I, in my setup, which is under Tools Setup, HR Attendance Setup, have chosen to accrue in human resources, this vacation balance and sick leave balance will not be there, because we know in HR we can have multiple balances, and right now this time card area does not support the many balances like we have in HR. It will in the future, but right now it doesn't. So that's why I demonstrated with payroll. So you will see the two balances. When we have it set as HR, those boxes will be gone. You cannot move these boxes around. They are as they are. You can change the view a little bit. This down here is your current week. So it's just your current week based off this user date right down here. So if I change my user date, it will change to any time that I have submitted. It does not correlate with your pay periods. So that might be a little bit confusing to your employees or to the manager. It's just showing your current week of time based on whatever date I'm logged into the system or to the web client. So it does not correlate with your pay period schedule. It's just looking at the current week. And as we get into more of the business portal replacement products, you're going to see, I need to, right now it's enter time and recall, but it'll be quick links to see my paycheck online, change my address. So again, very simplistic, drilling back and giving the employee that same look and feel similar to we had in Business Portal. So just to recap, I'm an employee in the system. I am a manager as well. So I'm kind of just a one person all up just to demonstrate today. I have it set to accrue in payroll. I can enter time. And also under my additional information is where I link to my user. And this is stored in the UPR 00100 table as well. We added a new column called user ID in there where you can link that information. So that's held in the UPR 00100. A new column was added in R2. And now that we have all our setup information, when we're on the HR and payroll, here you can see we have our navigation list. We have historical time cards, very similar to what we had in Business Portal. Under historical, we have my team, my delegates. A delegate is using that entry time on behalf of that we set up, is called the delegates or all. This is my current time cards, my saved, rejected, submitted, my team, my delegates, and time card pending approval. So you can see it all here on the navigation, which really ties to what we had on our time management area. So when we say pending user action, if I had 5 here, it would be the same thing as if I was going into time cards pending approval. So if I click on that, it would bring me into this navigation list. So I'll go ahead and look at my team first. So remember how I assigned I'm a manager. So the people that I assigned to me as their manager would be shown in this team view. So I have my own time cards as Terry. I'm also a manager for employee 1079 and some of these other employees listed in the system. If I click on my delegates, you can also see that I have delegates in the system. And when that comes up, I have a couple delegates that I can enter time for, or I can choose all. So I can enter time for Lee. He's a delegate. Remember how I stated five time cards? So you can see I have 5 time cards for all my information. I'll go back up into my team and we'll look at some of that time card entry. I'll just go ahead and choose myself. You can see here those were the codes that I have assigned to me. Again, as we enter time, this will update both payroll and HR. So both of the areas will be updated. I have my pay periods in here. Very similar to how Business Portal entered. So I can enter my time. If I need to split this out, I can go down here and add a new line item as well. As I tab through these and get over my limits of pay periods that we set up in the restriction for hours, it will prompt you for that. I'm going to go back up into this grid view. And when I click on transaction details, You can see now I have 129 hour. Here's your department. I'm going to change that to accounting. And here's my position. I'm going to change it to accounting clerk. So as I tab through, now I'm on Thursday the 30th. You can see here that it goes to the 30th, and I can change those as well. So you can change your departments and positions, or my taxes, whatever I had marked in my restriction to allow to edit, I can change as I go through these windows. You can see the date changing. So that's how the details pop up for you entering your time. We have delete row, we have templates, very similar to what we had templates in Business Portal. If I continually usually work 8 hours in this one area, I can create a template of that and assign it to myself. So then that template comes up and then I can make changes to the template. I'll go ahead and submit this time card. So once I submit, it's going into workflow to my manager, which I'm an all-up manager. For demonstration purposes, I'll just go into the time card pending approval. Here's my time card. I can see that information and I can approve this time card or reject it. Another thing that we didn't have in Business Portal, there is a recall option. So you can recall a time card. So if I did submit something or a change, I can recall that and it'll come back to me before the manager approves it. Once it's in the manager approves it and it's in the back office, then we can't recall anymore. I'll go ahead and approve. I can approve, delegate, or reject. I'll just go ahead and approve it. This is the new workflow. It's all those comments are saving in workflow history. So that's kind of nice as well. Now, if I go under my historical time cards, I've submitted a couple, so I should see those submitted time cards. In all these navigation lists, we can send things to Excel. We can print lists. So you can do that under your managers, your teams, your delegates. Any of that information can be used. I'll go in under the home area. You can see I have now 2 approved time cards. If I go in under the HR and payroll again, and just to show my batches, so it went through workflow, my manager approved it. If I go into transaction entry, I had submitted one prior, so you can see very similar to Business Portal. They're going in with the different batches, and the 1 and 5, those are my pay periods. So my first pay period and my 5th pay period. As more employees enter time for that pay period, it would go into those batches as well. So I can pull that up, and here's my time. You can see my departments that come in. Your state taxes are going to come in, just as they did with Portal. And you can see I had 4 hours to the different departments and my rate. I can still make changes on here as a payroll clerk and make those changes, and they would not change your time card history, but it would change on your check going forward. That is the completion to today's course. Just to review, we covered the setup of our time cards for the new time card entry. We also looked at our employee time card entry, and then we entered some time cards. We viewed the navigation list, and we also looked at our home page and how that would be viewed for our employees. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video today, and good luck as you go and deploy your new time card entry.